Cudmore just
popped up for the inside.
Can he go all the way? Yes, he can.
Mark Creighton done on the outside.
Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Rugby Canada Report, Canada's only online rugby video production. I'm James Mangialardi. This week, we take a look at highlights from the quarterfinals of the Canadian Direct Insurance League. We visit with players from the Ontario Blues, who were coached by Kieran, Crowley and Tait this past weekend. And also, we'll look at Canada's preparations for the upcoming World Cup qualifiers, as well as the Churchill Cup in the US. The Rugby Canada Report is brought to you in part by the Rugby Canada Fishing Classic, taking place this June 13th to 16th at Langara Fishing Lodge. It was playoff time this past weekend in British Columbia, with a pair of quarterfinal contests on tap. The Castaway Wanderers were tied 15-all with the Marilomas in Vancouver when CW fly half Matt Buckley slotted a penalty kick to give his side a tight 18-15 road win. The other quarter saw Bayside travel to James Bay, where they took on the Coffin Corner of McDonald Park. Our Andrew Smith was there and gives us the highlights from this exciting contest in Victoria.
Over 100 minutes of intense rugby were played out on Saturday at McDonald Park as the Bayside Sharks ventured across the Georgia Strait to battle it out with James Bay for a spot in this week's semi-final against the Velox Valhounds. The last time these two sides met, the Sharks upset the current CDI Premier League champions with a 39-11 lashing. With their squad at full strength, however, the Bays were up for the challenge as the sides alternated scoring and went into the second half of overtime for a winner to be determined. James Bay veteran Jeff Williams opened the scoring with a solid penalty conversion after the Bays pounded the Sharks towards their own try line for much of the opening minutes. Tyson DeGoody would barrel over shortly after as the Bays went up 10-0 with Williams' conversion. Bayside responded through heavy offensive pressure and eventually earned themselves a penalty that saw Eric Segura convert to get them on the scoreboard. As the Sharks found their rhythm and forced their way towards James Bay's try line, Brody Henderson found space to narrow the lead before Segura's conversion drew the visitors level at 10-10. Jeff Williams would convert another penalty before Morgan Williams found space down the left wing to have his side leading 20-10 at the half. Bayside were nowhere near finished, however, as they opened the scoring in the second half through Chris Pack. Segura's conversion had them within 3 before Bays flanker Hugo Bellinger broke through for a try. The two sides would continue to alternate scoring through several phases before Jeff Williams converted a penalty to have the Bays leading 31-24. With the match all but over, Bayside's Brody Henderson went over for a try. The easy conversion drew the Sharks level at 31-all with less than a minute on the clock. The Bays pounded the Sharks' try line in the dying minutes but could not find their way through, and the grueling match went into overtime. As the intensity mounted, Bayside's Bruce Reldy burst through and ran in from the 22 to punch in the visitors' final try of the match. The steady boot of Jeff Williams would convert another penalty to narrow the lead 38-34 before the Bays finished the job through several impressive runs. Eric Forsyth would drive through the Sharks' defense to touchdown, before DTH van der Merwe would put the finishing touch on a close call for the current Premier League champions. Here's what Van der Merwe had to say about the close call his side had en route to their CDI semifinals next week against Velox Valhounds.
Well, first of all, it's good to win. Yeah, it's Bayside. That was probably the finals, like the game that should be in the finals. Bayside came out with all their forces, and we just had to dig deep and go for it. They gave us a good beating at the beginning of the season. We all knew we had to come back and show these guys that we're not an easy run over. And everyone just stuck together as a group, and every time they scored and we scored and match matching, we just know we have to come back. We all know that this can win us the games the way we're playing right now. Just proved it today with the extra 20 minutes, and so we'll just stick to the basics and make sure everyone's fit to come back next weekend.
So now it will be James Bay taking on Velox in an all-island semi-final this coming weekend, while the Castaway Wanderers hit the ferry again to take on Capilano at Klahani Park. Canadian team head coach Kieran Crowley and assistant John Tait were away from their Victoria base this weekend to spend some time in Ontario, working with the Ontario Under-18 and Ontario Blues in Oakville. Doug Cross visited the Sunday morning session at the Crusaders ground and files this report.
It's a cold Sunday morning in Oakville, but that doesn't deter over 30 players attending the latest training session for the Ontario Blues. One of 4 entrants from Canada in the newly expanded North America 8, now coined the America's Rugby Championship. On hand, Rugby Ontario President Gord Snedden updates players on the competition.
For a couple of years now, we've been wanting to get an Ontario senior men's side back on the field again, and this is a really great opportunity for us to do that, and that's why we seized that opportunity last fall.
While the team is coached by Les Gilson on this day, it is national team head coach Kieran Crowley and assistant coach John Tait that are on hand to offer insights and have a look at the talent on offer from the Blues squad. Crowley, who's been on the job a year now, says he's pleased with what he's seeing.
Yeah, no, it's coming along not too bad actually, Doug. Very pleased to get out here and have a couple of sessions. A session yesterday with the Canada Games group. There's some really promising young players here who showed some really good skill, and then obviously today with the team looking forward to that North American competition. We see it as a massive step for rugby in Canada, because you've got a pathway now of, well, here in Ontario, for example, you go from your clubs and then you're going to get picked for your regional team, and then you go into the Blues, and then you are matched against the best throughout the country, and we as national selectors are going to see the best front row in Ontario playing the best front row in the Prairies and the best front row in Atlantic and best front row in BC, and that's what we want, because we're seeing the best against the best, and the players are getting some real top quality rugby, so no, it's been good.
There's some familiar faces on this Blues team, including current national team back rower Aaron Carpenter and former Canadian team fly half Derek Daypuck, who marks his return to Ontario. Both were in the North America 4 competition playing for Canada East, and think this next incarnation will be even more exciting because of the identity the team will have in representing Ontario.
Yeah, we got our things figured out. We got a lot of good kids out here running around, and a lot of young, youthful talent that hopefully work their way up to the national team, and that's just everybody's goal here, is to find a way up there and find a way onto the team like some of us are, and we're trying to use our leadership to show those guys how to do it.
But the priority right now is to do well with the club in London, and we had a good run last year. At the end of the year, we ended up winning the consolation final, so that was exciting for the club. And also coming into Ontario, we want to win this thing coming up in September, so that's the priorities right now.
The America's Rugby Championship gets underway this September, with 4 teams comprised from BC, the Prairies, Ontario, and Atlantic Canada, as well as 3 from the US and 1 from Argentina. The IRB is expected to make a formal announcement about the competition shortly.
The trip to Ontario is the start of a week of travel for Crowley, who headed off to Charleston, South Carolina, and then Denver in advance of Canada playing in those cities in June and July.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we fly from here down to Charleston because we play the States down there in our first World Cup qualifier. I think it's important to go to places like that to do a recce to see what the situation is, you know, as far as facilities and that sort of thing, because you know, we want to make sure things are right. We don't want to leave anything for chance. So, you know, we're going to go down there and see what our training field's like, see what the scrum machine, for example, you know, what the availability of that, and just little things like logistics and you know, where we're actually staying and things along those sort of lines, because, you know, we're there for 6 days or something like that. So it's you got to make sure things are right and don't affect the so that our preparation can be right, because, you know, we've got to take responsibility for that. And then yeah, on the way back we're stopping off in Denver just to check out things there. You know, the Rugby Football Union have told us what we've got to do and all that sort of thing there, but, you know, we're going to be spending 23-24 days there, and from a team dynamics perspective and that we need to make sure that things are okay, and that we have you know, that the facilities and that we've been given are up to standard, because you know, it's a pretty important period for us.
And that's a wrap for episode 6 of the Rugby Canada Report. This is a co-production of Rugby Canada and the College of Sports Media. You can check out our website at collegeofsportsmedia.com. We'd like to know what you think of the show, so drop us a line at info@rugbycanada.ca. I'm James Mangialardi. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next week.
Popped up for the inside.
Can he go all the way? Yes, he can.
Mark Craig done on the outside.